Good morning to everybody on my right. Unfortunately, I'm the only one of the members in the House, but we do have some members online. It has gone 9 o'clock, and it's gone 9:05 actually, and we will start. A very warm welcome to all the officials and the political leadership of the Provincial Parliament, as well as members of the committee joining us online to our Parliamentary Oversight Committee. We're here today for a briefing by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on its annual performance plan for the 2026-2027 financial year, as well as a briefing on the fourth quarterly performance report, both the financial and non-financials. Just before we start, my name's Gillian Bosman. I'm just going to ask the members to introduce themselves. And then also if members could indicate if they're standing in for any other members as well.
Morning, Chair. It's Dave Bryant. I am on my way into the chamber. Apologies for running a bit late, so that's why I'm online, but I should see you in about 10 minutes.
Good morning. Noma Francis Mbomo standing in for Member Philander.
Good morning, Chair. I am the member of the committee.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Noko Masipa. I'm standing in for Benedicta van Minen. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other members? So we note the two apologies, one from Member Kaiser Philander and Member Mbombo standing in for her, as well as Member Van Minen, and Member Masipa will be standing in for her. I want to hand over to the Speaker and the Secretary to introduce their team, but it's a full House, so don't feel obligated to introduce yourselves, because this is one of the nice parts of this committee. We all know each other. It's not like the department where officials change all the time. But members, we're going to go straight into the meat of the presentation. So I'm going to hand over to the Speaker and the Secretary, and then we'll go straight into both presentations, and members can ask questions on both presentations if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, Chairperson, members, the Secretary and the Administration and Deputy Speaker. Chair, I think before we start, I think it's important to just give some introductory remarks. Chair, as you are aware, the work of this committee is particularly important as it serves as a mechanism through which Parliament holds itself accountable for the effective and efficient use of public resources entrusted to it. Chair, in fulfilling this responsibility, the committee contributes directly to strengthening public confidence in our institution and ensuring that Parliament remains responsive, transparent, and accountable. Chair, on today's agenda is significant. Today's agenda is significant as members will both consider the Western Cape Provincial Parliament's annual performance plan for the 2026-2027 financial year and the fourth quarterly performance report for the 2025-2026 financial year. Chair, together these items provide an opportunity to reflect on our performance over the past year, assess whether we have achieved our strategic objectives, and to ensure that our plans for the year ahead are realistic, measurable, and aligned with the needs and expectations of the people of the Western Cape. As Parliament, we have a constitutional responsibility not only to oversee the executive, but also to continuously evaluate and improve our own performance. Chair, this committee's deliberation therefore plays a vital role in ensuring that our institution remains fit for purpose, delivers value for money, and continues to strengthen representative democracy, public participation, and effective oversight. Chair, I will ask the team to take us through the presentation, but I think it's also important to highlight that, and I always make the point that Parliament belongs to all of us. We are all members, and all 9 political parties represented makes up Parliament. So it's our Parliament, and therefore the deliberations in that spirit is important for the institution as we build a credible institution that serves all the citizens of the Western Cape. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over directly to the Secretary and to whoever then is making the presentation as well.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to yourself, the members on the platform, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and colleagues. Our focus today particularly around the Q4 performance represents the end of a financial year and what we consider a foundational year for the 7th Parliament. It's been quite a busy period over Q4 of 25-26. Focusing largely on a number of strategies that needed to be developed, as well as frameworks and concepts. And we're pleased to report that all of those concepts and strategies have been developed. Over and above that, we've also worked on 2 additional strategies that are not covered in the APP, and that is a 5-year ICT strategy, as well as a 5-year people management strategy, so that we could build on the work that was done in those 2 areas in the previous parliamentary term. A large focus of the presentation today is going to be on the targets that were achieved. There were 4 targets not achieved, and these targets are finding their way into the current APP. The current APP also speaks to the implementation of all these strategies that's been developed, quite a few focusing on the core mandates of the institution, but also particularly around people management, the institutional climate journey, culture journey rather, as well as focusing on improving the support services to members. Chair, if you allow me, I would like to hand over to Ms. Goldster to take us through to the Q4 non-financial performance, and then Mr. Jawadin to take us through the financial report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, members. This is the report on the non-financial performance for Q4 of the 2025-26 financial year. The presentation will cover the legislative framework, a strategic overview, summary of the performance, and then the detailed Q4 performance. Chair, the report is presented in terms of sections 52 and 54 of FAMPLA, which require reporting and tabling by the accounting officer and the executive authority respectively, which promotes transparency, accountability, and answerability for the operations and the business of the Provincial Parliament. Chair, the next couple of slides just reiterate that the vision, mission, values, and priorities for the 7th Parliament continue to inform the work of the WCPP over the reporting period. Chair, now onto the summary of performance. Just to contextualize Q4, and the Secretary's already alluded to it. So year 1, being 2025-26, was the first year of the 5-year strategic period. We refer to it as a foundational year. And the committee will note that most targets in the APP for 2025-26 relate to putting in place performance baselines, but also ensuring we have strategies, frameworks, and concept documents that give effect to the vision of deepening democracy and also align to the 7th term strategic priorities. So we've registered significant achievements by Q4. However, and I'll get to it in a bit, the year did amplify and highlight for us some vulnerabilities around institutional capacity to deliver on some of our key strategic initiatives. In particular, there are three which the Secretary also alluded to: the Public Perception Survey, the OD review, and the Chamber Upgrade projects, which I'll discuss in a little bit more detail later on. This slide shows our overall performance for the quarter. So we had 40 targets for the financial year 25-26, and 38 were due by Q4. The other two were already due in Q2 and were achieved. Of the 38, 34 were met, resulting in an overall achievement of 89% for Q4. So we can see from the slide that all programs had targets for Q4. The two programs where some targets were not met were in Program 1, Governance, Leadership and Administration, where 3 targets weren't met, and in Program 3, Public Engagement, where 1 target was not met. So the next few slides focus on the areas of underachievement. The first target that was not achieved was the Public Perception Survey. So it was planned to be completed in the year 2025-26, but could not be completed in the year due to the following reasons. Firstly, the project commenced a little bit later than anticipated and during the year due to multiple competing institutional priorities by the line responsible for executing on this. And this was also compounded by a protracted procurement process. So once the project once the specifications were in place and the procurement commenced, the procurement process was rather protracted, which meant that we could not appoint a service provider to undertake the survey by the end of Q4. The second underachievement is in relation to the IT modernization project, incorporating the upgrades to the chamber, committee rooms, library, and so on. Due to the complexity of the project itself and related challenges at the procurement stage, we also could not appoint a service provider by Q4. The third area of underachievement was the organizational structure review. So the project commenced later in the year because there was a need also to align with the incoming leadership at the level of the accounting officer, and it was felt that there was a need for the new accounting officer to weigh in and input on the specifications in terms of scope of this very important institutional initiative. There were also difficulties encountered at procurement stage, resulting in no appointment of a service provider by Q4. The fourth area of underachievement is in relation to the indicator, the percentage of planned IR activities implemented. So the administration supports international relations activities, which are contained in an approved IR implementation plan. The plan incorporated 9 activities for the year, but 8 were completed during the year. The one which was not completed, SADCOPAC, was retained in the IR plan when the plan should have been amended to reflect a change in the planned activities for the year. So the Public Accounts Committee's decision to not attend SADCOPAC is documented. However, it remained in scope to be supported in terms of the plan, hence 8 out of 9 activities completed, which results in an 89% achievement for that particular indicator. So where things stand currently, the Public Perception Survey, the OD study, and the IT modernization project have been carried forward into the 2026-27 financial year and are all at procurement stage currently. The next section deals with the detail of the performance, but I'll try to summarize. So in Program 1, Governance, Leadership and Administration, we had 16 targets that were met of a total of 19 targets for the program. The 3 not achieved were already spoken to, which is the Public Perception Survey, the OD study, and the IT modernization project. So I'll speak only to the achievements. And in Program 1, there are very many targets. You will see it reflects most of the foundational work I referred to earlier. So the strategies, the frameworks, concept documents, baselines, but we continue to ensure that all governance and compliance requirements were met as we put in place these baseline strategies, frameworks, and concept documents. So just from a governance point of view, both the executive authority and accounting officer complied with all legislative obligations in terms of FAMPLA. Also, 100% of staff submitted declarations of financial interests as required annually. We also established a public-facing whistleblowing and complaints mechanism, which you can find on our website. It's public-facing, so it allows the public to lodge a complaint or to blow a whistle should there be any instances of suspected fraud or maladministration on the part of staff. Under Program 1, we also completed various concept documents that would begin to conceptualize some of our strategic initiatives for the 5 years. They include the evaluation concept document, which is essentially about conceptualizing how we would evaluate our oversight and lawmaking practices in the WCPP over the 5 years. The open data concept document, which I've previously described to this committee. We also concluded a number of frameworks, including the internal arrangements framework, which is a governance framework that regulates the interface between the EA and the accounting officer. We concluded the framework for strategic partnerships to build evidence-based capability in the WCPP, which is a key strategic priority for the 5 years. We also completed an information governance framework and, importantly, an AI framework for the year. In addition to the strategies and frameworks, we are beginning to build the evidence base for planning and decision-making through various studies and surveys, which we made a significant investment in the current year, in the current term. So we started in 2025-26 by commissioning a public performance and expenditure review, which was undertaken by GTAC in the National Treasury, and they came up with certain findings which we hope to implement in relation to core business, but also support functions, and they'd also made recommendations for areas where we could improve our efficiency and the outcomes in those areas. We finalized an organized stakeholder survey, which surveyed over 180 organized stakeholders to assess their perceptions of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament in terms of whether we were perceived to be trustworthy, have integrity, and also are able to effectively execute our mandate. We concluded 2 staff climate surveys during the year. And we also concluded work on an organizational maturity model, which is also a first initiative for the Western Cape Provincial Parliament that will help us to, over the course of the year, over the course of the term, assess whether we are actually strengthening our capability as an administration across the institution. By Q4, we'd also concluded a number of key strategies. So the business continuity strategy, the culture change strategy, and as the Secretary mentioned, although not targets for the year in terms of our APP, we also concluded a performance management strategy, the IT strategy, and the knowledge management strategy, which extend over the 5 years. I'll now go to Program 2. So Program 2 had 9 indicators and targets for the financial year, all of which were met. Under the sub-program plenary support, we concluded formalized procedures on the monitoring of executive undertakings and of House resolutions, as well as a concept document on post-legislative scrutiny, which, as we'd indicated before, is a strategic initiative we plan to roll out over the term that will look at assessing the impact of legislation. Under the sub-program committee support, we concluded the oversight and accountability strategy. We also prepared an evidence-based oversight tool, which sets out a procedure for formal consideration by committees of the reports that are tabled by Chapter 9 institutions. We concluded a formalized procedure for monitoring committee decisions. During the year, we also initiated engagements with civil society and organs of state for the purposes of cementing the committee relationships and ongoing collaboration with them. Specifically, we've cited the ad hoc committee on child protection reforms and the committee strategic planning session, where we had in attendance and in engagement Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 institutions. We also developed a procedure on committee feedback to stakeholders, a priority which has been raised consistently over time by various stakeholders as a gap in terms of our processes. I'll just skip to program 3. These are just some images and statistics of the committee activity and plenary activity during the quarter. In program 3, 7 of the 8 targets that were set for the financial year were met. The one that was not met relates to the IR implementation plan. Under program 3, we concluded a revised communication strategy. We did work on developing the new website. The scoping and specifications stages were concluded. We also began live streaming on Instagram and Facebook. Previously, it was only on YouTube, but we've now extended that to Instagram and Facebook. Under public outreach, we finalized the public education and outreach. We finalized the public participation framework, and all the public engagement programs were implemented as planned. The district-based awareness program was implemented as planned. The focused civil society engagements, we had planned to engage with 1 and actually exceeded the target by an additional 2. So we planned to focus on the elderly and ended up ultimately, upon request, we had included the youth and boys parliaments as part of the count for the focused civil society engagements. And the active citizen journey, which provides education to citizens around the budget, annual report, and SOPA stages of the parliamentary cycle, was also concluded in line with what was projected. In program 4, these are just some highlights. So we also highlight here the commemorative program around human rights. And then we also make mention of incoming official visits. We mention also the staff professional development seminar, which took place in Botswana and was attended by Western Cape Provincial Parliament staff. And these are just some images from those engagements, as well as some statistics. In program 4, member support, we had 2 targets, both of which were met. We had concluded revisions to the members' facilities guide and also the development of a capability strategy for members. Here we just acknowledge some other key activities, the swearing in of a member in the 4th quarter, as well as the completion of the annual member satisfaction survey. This is not a target for the current financial year. However, it is an undertaking that we would continue to assess as part of building the evidence base. We will continue to assess the perceptions of our key stakeholders, in this instance, principally members, in order to improve the services that we render to members. The overall satisfaction rate was 94%. We surveyed 13 areas, of which most achieved in excess of 80%, closer to 90%. So for 10 areas, we have close to in the upper 80%, up to 100%. And then there were 3 areas where we fared less well. And we've included some of the reasons cited by members for why they felt that these areas needed more attention. There were issues raised around scheduling and time management, cost effectiveness and cost benefit of some oversight activities, security arrangements, and logistical and accommodation challenges, as well as catering relating to oversight and committee work. The members' capacity building and training satisfaction was scored at 67%, where members felt that the explanation and communication of capacity building initiatives needed some attention. There was a perception of a bit of bureaucracy in approaching capacity building and training, a sense that the offerings were perhaps misaligned to members' actual needs, and that funding and reimbursement for the study needed to perhaps be reviewed. And it was felt that that was a bit restrictive. And then the lowest score was for facilities and the workplace environment, where we know we are a tenant in the building and highly dependent on the Department of Infrastructure to support the physical infrastructure in the building. Members felt that the infrastructure was marked by persistent failures, inadequate maintenance, poor ventilation, and temperature control, issues around parking, access and parking management, and also cleaning and hygiene concerns in the building. In addition to the target set, other notable activities were the memorandum of agreement that we established with the National School of Government that can assist us in delivering sector-specific but also bespoke and state-of-the-art training and professional development for staff and members. Members also participated in the fellows with the fellows of the Atlantic Council and foreign representatives during the quarter. And then we also mentioned we finalized the capability strategy, which I referred to. Chair, and that concludes the non-financial performance report for Q4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, with your indulgence, we'll move directly over to the next presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end. So over to Mr. Javadin.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Just with regards to my presentation, I'll be presenting the fourth quarter financial reporting as at the end of March 2026, which is effectively the end of the financial year. So in terms of our fourth quarter expenditure, of our adjusted budget of 274,273,000, we had spent 250,353,000, which is a percentage spend of 91.28%. If we remove the direct charge, which is the member salaries, then we had spent about 94% of our voted funds, which is an effective underspend of about 13 million. However, of that 13 million, as per Section 23(1) of AMPLA, the Speaker has approved the rollover of that underspend into the current and the MTF period for utilization for particular some projects. And the main reason for that spend only being about 94% is particularly with regards to some vacant posts and projects that was planned within the current or the past financial year, the 25-26 financial year, but was not finalized by the end of the financial year. The previous presentation did mention a few of them in terms of, for example, the AV upgrade in the chamber, as well as the audit study, which is planned to be initiated in this financial year. And another contributor to the underspend is the enabling allowance of members, which is demand driven. So obviously not the full budget was not spent there. So that is the main contributor to the budget not being fully spent in terms of WCPP. For program 1, of the 101,697,000, 92,462,000 was spent, which is just under 91% spend. The main reason for that spend not being closer to 100,000 is particularly in terms of projects that was planned, as mentioned before, and particularly the chamber upgrade, audit study, as well as some other projects that was what was planned to finalize as at the end of 25-26 financial year was not finalized. However, those funds has been rolled over and are planned to be finalized in either in this current financial year or over the MTF period. With regards to program 2, of the 25,409,000, we spent 25,524,000, which is a fully spended budget. And the reason why that budget is over the 100%, as we can see, particularly in standing committees, that is overspent. But that's particularly because of the fact that we had done an upfront payment for a study visit that took place in this current financial year, but the funds were utilized from the previous financial year. However, besides that, the standing committees would have fully utilized their budget. In terms of program 3, of the 18,933,000, we spent 18,158,000, which is
Javadin, if you could just hold a second.
Chair, it's just, would it be possible to have the item that Mr. Javadin is presenting on blighted, just maybe for members who are online?
Apologies, Chair, for I'm sharing.
Yeah, no worries.
We can flight that, but
Just the previous one was flighted, so just for consistency, it's just a.
but it's the same presentations that were sent to members in the link, as well as yesterday. I think at 11:30 I got it again.
Apologies, Chair, I think I inadvertently unshared my screen.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention because I've got it in front.
Okay, I'm not sure, Chair, may I repeat anything or may I continue? Okay. So as mentioned, on program 3, we spent just under 96% of that budget. So we were more or less on track with regards to that. The main contributor with that not being fully spent is the fact that within PEO there was the vacancy in terms of the manager post. So that contributed to that slightly less than 100% spent. For program 4, of the 70,848,000, we spent 67,716,000, which is also just a less than 96% spend. And there we can see the main contributor to that is the 64% under allowances. And as mentioned, members in AB allowances are demand driven. So as obviously those are spent as and when claims are received. So that we spend less than the budgeted amount or projected amount as well in terms of members enabling allowances. Program 5, direct charges, which is mainly member salaries, that budget of 57,386,000. We spent 46,493,000, which is 81% spend there. The main reason for that not being fully spent is in this sub-program we also make provision for any members' gratuities to be paid out, and there were not as many gratuities paid out as per what was in the budget. Chair, that's basically the summary of the expenditure or financial reporting as at the end of the fourth quarter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm just checking in again. I did say we can do all of the presentations, but maybe we should just stop and take questions on the fourth quarter performance presentations, both the financials and non-financials. So if the members online could just give us an indication whether they have any questions. I think I saw Member Bryan's hand and Member Barnes. Shall we take Member Barnes first, and then we'll go to Member Bryan?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to everyone on the platform and in the meeting physical. Chair, I only have 2 questions. My first one is on slide 16 for program 1 under governance, leadership and administration for quarter 4. On slide 16, we know that an IT modernization project implementation target was not achieved. Can we get a brief explanation, Chair, about this IT modernization project that was not achieved and what it seeks to achieve? Secondly, Chair, the justification given not achieving the target does not provide much details. Perhaps if one can get more details also on what transpired. Maybe in doing so, Chair, I must highlight also the challenges that one has picked up with our computers. Quite frankly, I think it's a right platform to say this to the speaker and to management. I don't think the Dell computers is doing justice to all of us members. It's not the caucus issue. Myself at caucus, I think about 3 of our members are facing serious challenges, including myself, of the computers that we are having, in fact, of the laptop steps rather that we are having. At times it's freezing. The other day, the keypads are not working. and it has nothing to do with IT support. We are getting support, but the computer itself, I don't think it was a good buy. We are really struggling. I have been embarrassed more than 2 times where I was presenting and just the computer switches off and then I must speak on top of my head. So I really think it's a good time also to bring this into this kind of meeting. Then Chair, also on slide 17, program 1 under governance and leadership, administration Q4 targets that were not achieved. I noted that there's an attempt to do another review, Chair, of organizational structure. What necessitated this review, Chair? In the past, there was a functional enhancement study conducted, which costed the legislature some money, I think. And what I'm not sure, was it ever fully implemented? This is why I'm asking, was it really necessary? What's the necessitation on this review? And what changes are being proposed and how much has been spent already on this process? Now, Chair, my last one would be on slide 38. On 38, Chair, the legislature has a target of a number of oversight and accountability strategies that are developed. The target was 1 and it was achieved. And now, if we can be furnished with more details as to what it was, Chair. Secondly, Chair, we have a challenge here in the province with MPLs who are blocked from conducting oversight visit at government institutions. We have seen that in the Western Cape Education Department. I think Member Heron also once had an issue with the Mitchells Plain District Hospital, and this is non-political or partisan. I think as this committee, we should also find a way and strategies that are put in place for members to be protected as equal members, all of us. I want to propose the team that they develop a strategy around this matter. But before that, we must get a legal opinion on MPL's rights and powers for oversight, including unannounced visits. So nobody's overstepping a boundary or somebody's toes, but we are freely doing the work that we are appointed to do, Chair. And I think this platform can look after members also into them being protected as much as the executive, as the Speaker highlighted earlier, that this is a parliament for all of us and we must do our work and we must be kept accountable for doing our work. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I noted Member Barnes initially said she had 2 questions, but there were considerably more than 2. So what I think we should do is we'll give an opportunity to answer those questions before we go over to Member Bryant, just so that we can have a little bit of a flow of a discussion. It's slightly easier. So I'll hand over for responses to Member Barnes's questions.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to Honourable Barnes for the question. I'm going to respond to them in reverse order, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleagues to respond to some of the more pertinent questions. Honourable Barnes and members of the committee, through your Chair, the issue about individual member oversight is something that is on the table with the legislative sector as a whole. It is something that speakers have raised, and they have requested the sector to work on a framework for this. So speakers also done something very similar, asking the team to prepare a guideline for individual member oversight. The team has worked on it. It is currently with the procedural hub. And Member Barnes, maybe just to deal pertinently with the issue on a legal opinion, we have asked the legal team to work on a opinion starting from a constitutional basis as to whether the Constitution doesn't make provision for individual member oversight. So there is work that's being done. I attended the Forum of Secretaries meeting over the last 2 days. This item also featured on the agenda. It will also feature on the agenda for the Speakers Forum that's scheduled for Friday. So there is a guideline and that the sector is working on, but I think the first question and the first hurdle we need to get over is the constitutional, whether there is a constitutional mandate that covers individual member oversight. So we will share the outcomes of those discussions both from the procedural hub as well from the sector level. I will ask Mr. Semene just to deal with the question around the oversight and accountability strategy. It's one document that has been developed, and he can maybe just elaborate on the details on this target. And then on the organizational review, I think myself and many of the colleagues who are working on this find ourselves at a bit of a disadvantage in that we were not there when functional enhancement was proposed. But one of the key risks we've identified in the strategic risk register for WCPP is a key person risk that we've already identified. Honourable Barnes, you often refer to the table staff, to Mr. Pochenpoel and Ms. Simon, who carries a lot of institutional knowledge with them. And this is one of the areas where we have identified a key person risk that necessitates us to ensure that we have adequate resources to carry the load of plenary support. There's similar examples in ICT, in people management across the institution, that really requires us to look at the organizational structure and to ensure that we have an appropriate structure for WCPP. I understand also at yesterday's Programming Authority meeting, the conversation around the constitutional amendment was proposed to be on the agenda. An increase in membership will necessitate also a revisiting of the organizational structure of WCPP. But I'll ask Mr. Titus if he has anything further to add on that item. And similarly with the IT, the challenge, I will ask Mr. Titus or Mr. Skriker to address that, to provide more details around what it entails. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. The issue around the organizational structure, and I think Member Barnes had requested the reasons as to why we are doing an organizational structure review if we had done this kind of thing through function enhancement previously in 2018 for implementation from 2019. I think the world of work, apart from what the Secretary has raised now, the world of work has changed. We're working in a hybrid context. There are skills that are required which we may not necessarily have. There are new jobs that have been that we've had to adopt that we may not have had previously. And so we need to be looking to what extent we are optimizing the staff that we are able to employ within the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, as well as aligning our organizational structure to our renewed strategy. And I think that is one of those are some of the other reasons that I wanted to ask to respond to. The question was also how much was the cost. We've not implemented the organizational structure review yet. I think Ms. Goldstone had indicated that part, so no cost so far incurred. The further question was whether the functional enhancement was implemented and concluded. Yes, there was a proposal at the time, as the Secretary correctly points out, that it was prior to our arrival, but there was a proposal that was done by a service provider, and the leadership of the organization made a decision and implemented the functional enhancement process. Part of the process was not only the structural review, another part of the process is also the ongoing training and capacity building and enhancement of skill sets within the organization, which is an ongoing matter. As far as, so that concludes the organizational structure review process. The only other part that I'm going to just speak to the AV, the audiovisual and modernization project. So it is an integrated IT project looking at reaching broadcasting levels and full integration for IT within the chamber, the committee rooms, our translation and interpreting services, the library services, the lobby, all of those integrated. The last time that there was any upgrade to the full overall and upgrade of the services within the chamber was in 2015. And what we have realized is that in order for us to be a modern, have a modern look in how we are broadcasting the work that is being done in the House, that is a necessity. I think the integration part becomes even more important. I think Ms. Goldstone had indicated earlier on what the situation is with that particular process. It is something that we are still very, very committed to. It's one of the flagship projects. And I'm going to ask Mr. Skriker to just speak about the current computers and as well as just some of the issues around the chamber refresh and integration with the committee rooms. If there's anything that I've left out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just some more information regarding the modernization. The modernization focuses on modern technologies. We currently very restricted in terms of how these things are interconnected and how we broadcast it and how we experience that in the chamber as well as in the committee rooms and how the public needs to experience it. So we realize that those experiences has to be different. So our hybrid environment is not ideal, it's not optimal. So the modernization addresses that. The modernization looks at our other venues and see how tightly the other venues like the auditorium, the library, the committee rooms can integrate with the chamber as well. So we could literally expand the chamber to any of those rooms if we have to. It looks at modern ways of utilizing the camera systems and the camera frames, so much so that we can take those camera angles anywhere in the world and not restricted to this environment. Looks at the television sets, etc. So overall, it modernizes not all the parliamentary functions across the board, and looking at the latest and greatest technology. So we'll be doing fairly well in terms of a modern parliament worldwide and competing at that level using these technologies. In terms of the challenges with the computers, I think we need to acknowledge that there's been some challenges with these hybrid devices. For us, we try to achieve the best of both worlds. The one is when you're in the office, you use the device as a laptop. And the other aspect is that when you were in the field doing your constituency work, that you will have a device that would act as a tablet. We experience in terms of functionality, I think the specs addressed it. But in terms of the practical device, we realized that there was a lot of shortcomings in terms of the quality. Now, what have we been doing about the challenges about these devices? We've met with the manufacturer multiple times. We've explained to them the challenges we are experiencing. Fortunately, we did put the right contracts in place to ensure we can support the members and that we can replace the hardware if it's faulty. But it is that what the members said, the freezing, the ad hoc problems, that we're trying to get our heads around it. We don't have a solution yet. We did purchase these devices. They are backed by proper warranties, and we are engaging the manufacturer on a weekly basis on this matter. Further to that, the intent is then to draft a memo to the secretary explaining the situation and see what can be done once we have concluded the engagements with the service provider. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on what the Secretary has said, in the past year, one of the things that we've engaged in as the core business of Parliament was to look at our oversight and accountability strategy. Now, our oversight and accountability strategy, then having looked at it, then we have gone to review process for that. And we've came up with our strategy that has got looking at different strategies, but among those will be the issue of post-legislative scrutiny that we have spoken about, and to the extent that we have done the concept document and the framework for the post-legislative scrutiny. But our oversight and accountability strategy also is looking at issues around the performance oversight. How to scrutinize the annual performance plans? How do we deal with quarterly performance reviews? How do we consider annual reports? How do we make follow-up on audit findings and recommendations? And issues like monitoring of services. And also looking at the issue around the budget oversight. How do we then ensure that we do the complete oversight over the budget process that is being done? And also the legislative oversight, which is one of the measures that provide effectiveness of the legislation and ensures that the laws that achieve their intended objective, which may result then in the post-legislative scrutiny that I spoke about earlier on. Another strategy, because this is not only for committees, but it is for the broader core business, which is both committees and plenary. We look at how do we deal with the issues of executive undertakings, how do we follow up on them, how do we record them, how do we ensure that in the process, the commitments that are made in the House, they don't just end up being commitments, but they're being followed up, and also how do we deal with the issue of tracking the committee resolutions, because at times committees, they make resolutions. What happens to those resolutions thereafter? Do they only end up being your committee resolutions, or these are the resolutions that get to be followed on and come to the House so that the House make resolutions that will be enforceable or gain the weight of enforceability? The issue of individual member oversight, it's one of the also strategies that we're looking at within that particular strategy. But this one, it's a bit tricky, as the secretary has said, because also there are legal issues that are attached to it that needs to be clarified. Yes, it can be done, but how does it being done? Do you have a mandate? We have seen also in the national TV that this has been a hot topic currently as to how this is supposed to be done. So we don't want to just do things or say we can do things that may be perceived to be, contentious and, are being unconstitutional. And also, how do we ensure that our public participation also becomes citizen-centric and also being able to assist us, in terms of conducting the oversight? Also, those are the things that, how do we strengthen democratic accountability by incorporating the experiences and concerns of citizens in the process of the oversight activities? And also how do we integrate now and plan our oversight? How to promote a coordinated approach to oversight across committees and parliamentary structures? And also the issues of digital and data-driven. I mean, we're in the VUCA world. How do we then ensure that whatever that we do provides support or is being given support by digital transformation, the issues of committee and e-portals, the digital resolution tracking, the performance dashboards, the AI-assisted parliamentary support tools, the electronic supporting and monitoring systems. So these are the things or strategies that the OVEC strategy itself is underpinned. And also the OVEC strategy, Chairperson, is that it is based or is implemented in accordance with the principles of transparency, accountability, responsiveness, integrity, inclusivity, innovation, evidence-based decision-making, and continuous improvements. Because again, we're saying that we're striving to be the best regional parliament. But then if we are striving to do that, these are some of the key things that we have to look at. How do we then ensure that our strategy remains evolving and also adaptive to the times and the changing times? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm just checking, Member Barnes, are you satisfied that all of your 4 questions were addressed adequately, and do you have any follow-up questions?
No follow-up to question at the point in time, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm then going to hand over to Member Bryan and then afterwards to Member Mbombo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And my apologies again for being a bit late. I was held up in a bit of traffic. But it's good to be here physically in the chamber and to see such a good turnout as well from all the officials present. I've got a couple of points. The first one is just in terms of the IT modernization. And it was very good to hear from Mr. Titus and Mr. Skricker in terms of those modernizations. And I think it goes a very long way towards ensuring that we are a public-facing parliament because parliaments are for the people. They're not for us as members or you guys as officials. They are for the people of the Western Cape. And for many people, it's very difficult, no, impossible to come in to sit in a session. So for members of the public to make it as accessible as possible for them and as interactive for them as possible. When one watches a session, it is nice to be able to see the person who's asking a question or the person who's answering a question. And I know our speaker has been quite diligent in trying to get members to turn their cameras on during sessions, which sometimes happens. But even so, the way that it's set out at the moment, that member will often appear as a little block in the top corner. I'm just very pleased to hear that that is going to happen so that it can be a public forum that people can log on to via YouTube and really feel like they are part of the parliament. So I suppose my question is just in terms of the timeline for that implementation, and if there's a deadline in place. I see it's been carried over, but is it estimated that it will be finalized within this financial year in terms of the procurement of the new software and those new platforms and the cameras and all of those sorts of things? It kind of brings me on to the second question, second point, which isn't as nice, which is in terms of the chamber upgrade itself. Now, if one looks at the current issues and you look at the facilities and workplace environment aspect of that survey that was explained to us, and the score of 33% for facilities. Now, I know we are a tenant, okay? We all understand that. But I don't think we can continue to use that as an excuse for the fact that, for instance, we haven't had proper security in place for members for over a year, that the boom in the basement doesn't work, that the scanner for the one member's entrance has been broken for over a year, that the door when we come in doesn't work properly, and all sorts of other aspects which we have raised on many, many different occasions. And the conclusion that I draw is, are we putting the cart before the horse in terms of trying to upgrade our chamber where we are a tenant, if we aren't able to fix the most basic security issues, such as a broken boom and a faulty scanner? So I know it's not a very nice way of putting it, but I do think it needs to be said, and I do think that that came through very strongly in the members' survey as well. I've got just two more points. I agree wholeheartedly with Member Barnes. I do think that these PCs are a bit of a challenge. I've had to send mine in to be repaired already, and it was fantastic because the warranty covered it straight away and it was done. But it was an issue, and my own keyboard is now also struggling to work a little bit. I've got to kind of hold it at a certain angle. So that is a challenge, but I'm glad that you have acknowledged that and that it is going to be followed up on. So thank you, Mr. Stricker. And then just in terms of the last point, which Mr. Stemeli made in terms of the executive undertakings. So I've got a question just in terms of executive undertakings for my own understanding. When it is a standing committee meeting, obviously standing committees are an extension of Parliament. If a member of the executive is present in a standing committee and makes an executive undertaking, the same procedures would apply, I assume, as an extension of Parliament. And then, I mean, who ensures that the executive undertakings are followed up on? Is there a designated official? Because my understanding is that would be the responsibility of the members and the ministries to follow up on executive undertakings, or is there a specific official who has the delegated authority to hold ministers to account? That's the question. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we want to answer that and then come back to Member Mpombo? So we'll do that.
Chair, if I may, on the first question around the timeline for the implementation of the IT modernization, we are looking to take advantage of the number of constituency periods in this financial year to try and address that modernization. So we are looking at March next year. It's obviously subject to a procurement process which has been fairly detailed and required the appointment of an external expert to assist the bid evaluation and the bid adjudication committee to make sure that we get the right service provider to render those services. Just in terms of the second comment, we do accept that there are concerns. We have escalated some of these concerns to the HOD of DOI, and Speaker will also confirm that we've escalated some of the concerns to Speaker directly and to Minister Simmers as well. As a result of that engagement, we now have, or we try to have, a monthly meeting with the HOD for DOI. It's myself included in that meeting, together with Director for Institutional Enablement and the Manager for Security. The items that you've raised around the security boom, the scanner, etc., these are things that we are dependent on DOI to assist us with that services. Some of these are coming to fruition. We've also proactively reviewed the service level agreement with DOI. That agreement has expired. We haven't had any feedback from DOI, so I've instructed the legal team to rework the SLA and then to present it to DOI for sign off, so that we don't wait for things to happen. I don't think it's a matter of putting the cart before the horse. The core business of the institution still needs to carry on, and we still need to make sure that our facilities that are within our domain and within our capacity to maintain, that we as an institution need to do that. So the chamber upgrade, the committee room upgrade, those are all things that fall within our purview and that we are able then to process further. Around the Dell challenges, we've received a number of complaints, and these have been also referred, some of them to my office. The team is busy with an assessment. I am aware that they've had engagements with the service provider, so I am anticipating a report and a recommendation in this regard. On executive undertakings, these are mainly focusing on undertakings in the plenary session. We have the plenary support team that will capture those undertakings and then send a formal communication under the signature of the Speaker to the Minister to inform the Minister that on such and such a day you made the following undertaking to the House, and we require you to act on this undertaking. We also attach the Hansard for that purposes. In terms of committees, the expectation is that this must be followed up within a committee context. So a correspondence from the chairperson of the committee to the ministry to inform them of undertakings that were undertaken by the executive member. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if my colleagues want to add anything.
Mr. Stemele wants to add.
Yes, thanks, Secretary. Over and above that, if then the member or the committee wishes those to happen, there is a process also under the committee resolution tracking that is being followed by the committee. So the procedural officers, they are fully aware of the process and they always follow that particular process, and they get recorded currently in the spreadsheet, but we're in the process of digitalizing that. We had our meeting again yesterday to kickstart the project. Thank you.
We're in the process of digitalizing a spreadsheet.
Not the spreadsheet, Chair, but the process of tracking.
I'm just pulling you along. So in my previous life, Mr. Stemele, I used to be a publisher, and in 2014, the term ePDF started being used in the publishing industry, and I kept on asking colleagues, what is an ePDF and how is it different from a PDF? Because a printed PDF is a piece of paper. So when does it become an ePDF? So it's just a little joke. There was a follow-up, but I also saw the secretary wanted to add something.
May, just on the last point, our IT team has been engaging with their counterparts in other provinces around digitizing some of our processes. And we've had the benefit of a presentation of the IT team supporting the Northern Cape Legislature, and they have an e-resolution tracking system. So that is what Mr. Stemele was referring to. Thank you.
Member Bryant.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a very quick one. In terms of the executive undertakings, so just to clarify, so it's the responsibility of the Speaker for a plenary and the responsibility of the chairperson of a standing committee to inform the Minister of an executive undertaking, but there's no direct jurisdiction that either of those two have over holding the minister to account. It's merely a courtesy. Am I getting it correct?
Speaker wants to answer, and the Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. I think so. When a decision or a commitment is made in the House, it becomes a decision of the House or a recommendation of the House, and in that way, the House through the Speaker will hold the minister accountable. The same within a standing committee from the chair, I mean, it's nothing that's not happening currently, because if a minister makes a commitment that he will supply or she will supply a presentation, doesn't have it with them, the committee coordinator or committee support staff, in any case, as part of the resolutions, communicate that to the executive. So there's nothing that's not happening currently. So absolutely, the committees being from a resolution perspective hold the minister accountable, and through the House, or in the commitments in the House through the Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member Mpombo.
Good morning again. Thank you. It's just a quick one. One, on the issue of the individual conducting oversight outside the committee. Remember, the members' affairs office, that there is an allocation for us to do the constituency, and they understandable when you have to now to plan to go to a constituency and conduct oversight. It's a non-political party. It's a work related to government or whatever, it might be community. So you will provide a program. But the point that I'm trying to make is about part of that is to conduct oversight in your own constituency. Be it you have to go to a school, there's a program, or be it you have to go to a hospital, be it you have to go whatever, anywhere. But at what extent that you provide a guide in regard to that aspect, and also in terms of the resources, because the resources I get provided is for me to go to, e.g., to George, and then also to have a car, or whether I use my car or whether it's a hired car. But in regard to, in terms of writing to the school, which is most of the time is unlikely because you want to do unannounced. And also, if now the constituency days is every week, you won't be able to even have a site around that. So what are the guides? Or when you do the guides in regard to the oversight, please include those, because some of the oversight has got nothing to do with your portfolio committee and related to that. And then secondly, it's about, I think it was just mentioned also by the colleagues as well, about we are saying that part of the parliament is also about the public. When they come to the committees, they'll say they're going to come and all of those. At what extent that you provide, especially those specifically pertaining to the sector, who provides the resources? Because although we feed them, but in regard to, in terms of even coming specifically for that committee, for example, when we talk about the mobility, we cannot leave behind those who are using the non-motorized equipment, like the wheelchair people, when they want to come and be part of this, especially in the chambers. At what extent that you provide that? Because the committee money is not enough to provide all of those, yet you do want to those people, the Danisaras, to have an input. And then lastly, I think the issue also of the technology. I think, remember, Brian has indicated that, because when you check and look at all of these and compare with the NA1, in the NA1 they will have a frame, and then it will be portfolio committee of whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is member, whatever, Mbombo. So it's always there. You don't even have to, even if it so happen that you watch on the TV, you are not sure what is happening. So already there is an identity that is there. For ours, the identity will be based, you won't be able to know what was all about, especially when probably you catch up on the YouTube for that particular person speaking. There's nothing that provides in terms of what is the context, specifically on the frame that is specifically being zoomed. And then probably I'll ask the other ones later, but or the executive, because it might be double-sworded, because I was an executive, but yeah. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Member Mbombo. I've got a 14-year-old nephew who calls my meetings podcasts. He keeps on asking, how's your podcast going? Because he lives in Portugal and he watches and he says, you just see a little dot going, which I always find very funny. I just want to dovetail before I hand over for answering Member Mbombo's question. I just want to dovetail on Member Mbombo's first question around oversight and how members fund that. I just wanted to find out, what is the official policy of the WCPP when a committee organizes oversight, but a member elects to use their own transport? The current practice, from my understanding, is that if transport is provided, the member cannot claim from the committee budget. The member has to claim from the enabling allowance. But if a committee is going to Swellendam, and I'm going to use member Windvogel for an example, and member Kaiser Philander, the practice is that that member is then requested to drive from Swellendam to Cape Town to take the WCPP transport to be able to get around during that oversight. All members will have to be picked up on the N2 because members are reluctant to claim from the enabling allowance because it increases their tax liability. So I just wanted to understand that, just as a dovetail to Member Mbombo's first question, but I'll hand over for answers for that round. I think the speaker had his hand up.
Good, Chair. I just want to make a few comments. So let me start with the transport question that you just asked and the example that's just being used or posed. I mean, Chair, respectfully, sometimes logic must prevail. So I mean, it just doesn't make sense for a member. Let's use member Windvogel, because you used that example, to drive from Swellendam to the chamber or to the WCPP to drive back. As the custodian or as the chairperson, I mean, the committee can make that decision to say that we will fund, because logically it makes more sense for the member to use their own transport. So I don't think that we must be, I mean, wat is die Engelse woord nou, vasstaar and practical logistical bureaucracy, if I can call it that. But I mean, logic prevails, and logic dictates that does make sense. That's the one point. Then the other point on the who funds and the resources. So the enabling allowances allocated to members is to enable them to perform their functions as a member of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. It's not allocated, Honourable Mbombo, to be used in your constituency. So if you want to do unannounced visits outside of your constituency based on the supporting documents, as a member of the WCPP, then absolutely you can do it, and you would use your enabling allowances to enable you to perform your function as a member of the WCPP. So it's not constituency allowances. Constituency allowances is provided to political parties. The resources allocated to a member is enabling allowances to enable you to do your work as a member of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Chair, then the technology, I think Mr. Skrikke has already answered those. I'm not going to touch on those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to take the first comments of Honourable Mbombo as suggestions for a guide on individual member oversight. As I've indicated, this is something that the legislative sector as a whole is seized with, and to look at what is the best way to address individual member oversight, including the issue of resourcing that oversight and where the resourcing should be located. Should it sit in members' allowances, constituency allowances, or should legislatures make provision for that? Around the participation of public and who provides the transport, I'm asked Mr. Stemele to respond to that. Then just on the last point that Honourable Mbombo raised around comparing NA screening and the identification of speakers. The NA is very fortunate to have a dedicated AV team for both committee screening as well house screening. It's a big team, and I think it's a further argument for us to do an exercise, an OD exercise, to see whether WCPP needs similar resources so that we can present ourselves on different media in a more professional way. I always look at the way the NA, the NCOP sittings, as well as committee meetings are broadcast, that it looks very professional, but there is a highly technically skilled team that sits behind the scenes and that are able to capture all those little subscripts and subtitles that we see at the bottom. So it is a resourcing issue that we will need to look and to what extent we can justify it at WCPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stemele.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, on public, in terms of the provisioning of transport, we do provide transport for public hearings and public engagements, or stakeholder engagements. But beyond that, WCPP currently doesn't have a financial muscle to carry that. But also, it is one of the reasons that we've been at pains trying to explain that the importance of us planning these engagements, so that when we seek to go and get funding, from Treasury, we're able to say that these are the plans that we're sitting with for a period of 5 years. Therefore, we request money so that we can be able to fund these particular plans based on our strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Mpombo, do you have any follow-up questions, or are there any other follow-up questions from members on some of those comments? I'm going to just ask, I just want to confirm, Speaker, whether I heard you correctly. So in terms of making accommodations, or as you said, logic must dictate, so making logical accommodations for members, you're saying that it's within the remit of the chairperson and the committee to make that decision. I can tell you, in effect, in practice, it's not, because the feedback that chairpersons get is that this is the policy, that you cannot. And I can use an example of my constituency, for example, as well. If we've got an oversight in George and I'm in my constituency, the expectation is if I use my own car to go to George, everything that I claim for in George has to be claimed for my enabling allowance. But I'm not sure if that's the practice with other members as well. I think we might have to engage through the Deputy Speaker and the Chairperson's Forum to see whether this is an issue in other committees, but it is something that members have raised. But I see two hands.
Chair, I mean, it doesn't even, and again, logically make sense. So if you speak about the use of resources, allocated resources on behalf of the taxpayer, it makes logically and financial sense to not drive up and down. I mean, and it is the decision of a committee. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Titus?
Thank you very much, Chair. The Deputy Speaker, apart from being the chair of chairs, is also the chairperson of the Members' Interest Advisory Committee, where these particular challenges, matters, grey areas must be debated. That particular forum lives in the context of the Members' Facilities Guide. It is directed by the Members' Facilities Guide, and it's also the space where these particular aspects must be addressed. That committee provides the advisory services to the secretary, the CFO, as well as to the speaker. And I think these matters must be aired or submitted to the committee so that the committee can discuss and provide thought process around that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Speaker.
Can I just, for the record, just ask, so Chair, because I think it would be remiss of me not to ask you this on record. But if it's not the decision of the committee, whose decision is it?
At the moment, the feedback that I've gotten, and I've seen via emails as well, when I've organized cluster visits as well, it's the Director Parliamentary Services and the Manager PO that gives that decision to committees to say members must claim from the enabling allowances.
Noted. Thanks, Chair.
Members, if I could maybe also just going back to my questions, when I look at the presentations table, there's a very high level of compliance indicators that looks very positive. And once again, I'm very grateful that we do get this as the WCPP. Overall, an 89% of sort of target achievement rate is seen. And we comply with all statutory financial reporting obligations under Farm Plan. That remains rock solid, as has been the practice. And I want to acknowledge all the hard work from all the officials there. But sort of for POC being the oversight mechanism of this institution, I think we also need to look beneath the surface of that. And when you look at the substance of sort of us being in the foundational year, there's a pattern that I'm picking up that's emerging. So we're looking at an institution with a massive appetite for drafting strategies, but we're slacking, I think, when it comes to the track record of executing them. So if we look at the amount of paperwork generated, the administration has done a remarkable job at in this reporting period, on adopting or drafting macro level strategies or frameworks or concepts. We've got an AI framework, a culture change strategy, an information governance framework, an open data concept, a members capability strategy, just to name a few. And on paper, that all looks good because completing all of those, you can tick off 100% performance has been achieved. But as the chair, what I must ask is what happens when these strategies are required to hit the sort of the real world? What the data is showing that there's some stall when it comes to implementation. So we've successfully adopted an advanced artificial intelligence framework, yet the actual IT modernization plan hits a 0% implementation rate because there were the technical requirements and complexity wasn't taken into account when it came to actually getting that strategy implemented. We've got the members capability strategy, and we spent 95% of the program for budget, yet the actual workplace and facility environment perception plummets to 33% in terms of the satisfaction rating. The operational milestones that impact organizational growth, like the public perception survey, the organizational structure review, all of those things are still stuff that we're not getting to sort of the underlying issue that I'm seeing, and maybe I'm not seeing a pattern, so correct me, is we seem to be very good at the thinking stuff, but we're struggling with the deployment. My perception is that a lot of that comes from the actual resources that are allocated to Parliament to implement a lot of this, because to implement an IT refresh or a technology refresh program for an institution like this, when you look at the budget of the institution, in some instances, in some legislatures we've seen, not just around the world, but in the country, it's more than the budget of the actual legislature itself. So the question I'm asking is, when do we have the honest conversation with the Treasury around what it actually costs to run the type of Parliament that we want, where we're able to meet our core mandates? And how do we move from taking all of these strategies and actually fully implementing them and saying, to be able to do what we want, this is the kind of financial package we need for Parliament? So that's my first question. That was quite a long one, so I'll give you time to digest. Member Bryant wants to add, I think.
Yeah, it's just to add on that, and it was something that I meant to mention in my first question. I think you mentioned, Ms. Goldstein, 3 projects that were delayed because of procurement issues. Well, I know a lot of those things are beyond your control, but is there something that we can escalate or look into? Because one can have the best of intentions and all the systems in place, but if it's failing at the hurdle of procurement, and I know government institutions are always fraught by procurement challenges, it's an endemic problem. But can you just expand on what those challenges are? Like, be a bit more specific, and maybe there's something that we as members can do to help escalate that and assist where we can. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the question. I'm going to share my initial response to this team when I saw the APP and I saw the number of targets and I saw the number of annual targets. And I said, this is a tall order for such a small organization. Very ambitious, very good targets, but that we need to be realistic in terms of what we can do with the current resources. And I think the underlying answer to both questions is resources. We don't have enough resources to do the work. So even though the report says that supply chain was one of the reasons why 3 targets were not achieved, the bottom line is we have the same people that sits in different structures, but that's got to do their day jobs, but has to sit on a bid evaluation, bid specification, bid adjudication committee. And the time is simply not there. So it's a constant battle of using same resources to do different work under each one of these. So we've got different colleagues sitting on different structures that need to ensure that this procurement process moves ahead. My sense is also it's planning, our own planning, but planning again goes down to a underlying cause. If we have to ask all the why questions, it goes back to resources. We are a very lean organization. We've got very high ambitions with the kind of strategies that we want to deliver. These strategies are really excellent. And I must say, I had to read through all of them before I had to sign off at the end of March. And we had several exercises where we engaged with the different teams around what is it that we want to do, what is it that we want to achieve. I think we're the first legislature in the country to have an AI framework. National Parliament doesn't even have one. And it's an excellent piece of work that was done that really focuses on internally what is it that we need to do as an institution, but also how do we perform oversight over AI. We really have a very good capability strategy. The capability strategy focus purely on improving the ability of members to execute their core functions. And we would really want the opportunity to share these strategies with this committee, to go through it and to have a sense of what it is that the administration wants to deliver, because this is a big part of the 26-27 APP. So we haven't done a presentation for the 26-27 APP because it largely focuses on implementation of these strategies. And I think, Honourable Chief Whip, your question was around great strategies. What are we doing around implementation? So the focus for this financial year and the first quarter has been purely on developing implementation plans and to develop implementation plans that we are able to deliver against with our current resources. So we've had a session last week, Friday. We're continuing this week to meet with the different teams in terms of making sure that we're able to achieve these strategies, to indicate what is it that needs to be done, what are the support services that are required, what are the interdependencies between different directorates that need to support implementation, just to make sure that when we end this quarter that we have sound implementation plans in place. What we've done further, unlike in the previous APP, is that we have broken down the strategies into quarterly implementation, clearly defined what it is that each needs to be delivered for each quarter and what is possible with our current resources, mindful of the fact that these strategies are being implemented over the 7th parliamentary term. I think the more important question is, what are we doing in terms of our engagements with Treasury to get the funding model for WCPP correct? One of the exercises that we did, one of the targets that were concluded in the previous financial year was an exercise undertaken with GTAC, which is a subsidiary of National Treasury. And they conducted an expenditure review for the WCPP, focusing on the core mandates of the institution, i.e. what does it cost us to have lawmaking, oversight, and public participation. Emanating from that review, there were a number of recommendations that were made to the WCPP, and it didn't just focus on rands and cents, it's also focused on data that was presented to GTAC in terms of areas of improvement. I think a broader discussion that's happening at a sector level is a funding model for legislatures and what that should entail. And ideally, we are participating in that exercise to develop a funding model for WCPP to say what exactly does it cost the institution to be able to give effect to its mandates as set out in the Constitution. And to have that further engagement with the minister. I keep on telling the team, it's the first minister that I've met who's very keen to give a legislature money. We should be able to justify our request. And I think we should stop shying away of asking for more money. It's a trend in WCPP. We have one of the lowest budgets in the sector, next to Northern Cape. And yet we have very high ambitions with these strategies. I really want to see us execute these strategies because they really are game changers. And I want the opportunity for this team to be able to present those strategies to this committee, just to give a sense of where we see the institution go and ideally get us closer to that vision at the end of a 5-year term. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just for members of the committee, so I've counted out of the 19 Program 1 targets, 16 of those were concept documents, frameworks, and strategies. So what we will do is we will put a little grid together as part of our oversight to track how many of those 16 the next time you come here have actual execution plans attached to them, and in the next financial year, how many of them also includes budgets. And I think for a future discussion, and maybe what we need to look at is having a little more of an in-depth, face-to-face and sort of engagement or workshop on all of these strategies, where we can look at sort of the issue of institutional capacity, because it's very difficult for the administration to do the political fighting around the institution needing more support. So we need to look at what are the key constraints around implementing some of these strategic initiatives. And maybe the administration can then sort of in camera share with us what your own diagnosis is. So is it a sort of a capacity problem? Is it a planning problem? Is it a procurement problem? And then how do we take that to the sort of executive and say, we actually need to look at how do we better enable Parliament to hold the executive to account. Members, before I move on to the last round, I just wanted to ask in terms of the overspending line items. So standing committees, I think this is the first for me where the standing committees have overspent by just over 114%. What I'm specifically looking at is Hansard. There's an overspend of 115% there. If my memory serves me right, the Hansard budget was cut in the adjustment from 570 to 401, I think, 400 to just over, it was cut. But now there's an overspend. So was the adjustment sound, or was there a change in the sort of what the requirements for Hansard was? And while the colleagues answer that, members, if you could just indicate by raising your hands if you've got any other questions on the quarterly reports. I see no hands. I see Member Barnes. There we go, Member Barnes, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, but let me also say it was quite refreshing listening to your questions earlier, and it made so much sense for me, understanding that I have been raising for quite some time the issue of the budget for Parliament, that really I don't think it speaks to what members are supposed to be doing. Considering the vastness of the province and the population. And today, for me, it was very refreshing hearing it from another voice and another angle, also including the work that is expected also from staff within the Parliament. So I really think as a committee, it's something that we should have an ongoing conversation on to how do we address it. It's not always just that we want to have more money but it's the realities that we live in. Our budget does not speak to our realities within the province and how we are situated and what is expected from us to be executing. Chair, I must say I've been listening also to the members' capacity building and training, the 67 satisfaction percent. Members cited a restrictive funding model, administrative red tape, and misalignment with actual needs. Now, Chair, what I would want to know is that how does the newly endorsed memorandum of agreement with the National School of Government directly address the specific complaints regarding restrictive funding or reimbursement models and the bureaucratic approach perceived by the members? That's my one question, Chair. And then the second one, Chair, is under oversight and committee activities, 72% satisfaction. Issues included inefficient scheduling, safety concern, and cost effectiveness questions. My question there, Chair, is how will the newly developed oversight and accountability strategy modify current committee scheduling and logistics to remedy the cost-benefit concerns raised by members? Those are my questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Barnes. I'll then hand over to the Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. I'll ask the colleagues to address the questions around the Standing Committee overspend and the Hansard overspend, and then around I note the comment by Honourable Barnes around the budget. The members' capacity building, I will ask Mr. Titus just to share some information around the members' capability strategy, as well as the MOU with the NSG, and then Mr. Stamela will address the last question. Thank you.
Chair, if I may. Chair, just with regards to the overspend on standing committees and Hansard, with regards to the standing committee overspend, I did mention earlier as well, during the last quarter in the financial year, there was a study visit identified to Bavaria, and for that trip that took place, I think in April, there was an upfront payment we required to pay within March. So the funds was basically utilized from savings within this current, or in the 25-26 financial year, and allocated to standing committee budget. However, it was the fact that we paid an upfront payment for a trip that took place in the current 26-27 financial year, and hence the overspend on standing committees due to the fact that we paid that upfront payment, which was sourced from internal savings in the 25-26 financial year. Then with regards to Hansard, Chair, you are correct. We did cut the budget in adjustments estimate on Hansard. That was based on projections and what we expected to pay for the remainder of the financial year. However, in March, we got quite a big influx of invoices, which we paid in I think the last 2 weeks in March, relating to, I think, 6 months invoices from a particular service provider. And that was more than what we had projected for, and hence the overspend on the Hansard budget, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Member Barnes's question, two things I think that Member Barnes has mentioned. The one has been around the bureaucracy of training and training initiatives and the processes that need to be followed. And the other one has been around the NSG and to what extent the NSG will be assisting the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So just on the Secretary asked that I speak on the members' capability strategy. Chair, that has been one of the strategies of the lot that you've spoken about a little earlier that have been developed in the last financial year and has been approved. This has happened in consultation with some members as well as with parliamentary support services, but also looking at benchmarking within the country and against lead practice within the Commonwealth around training and development opportunities for members. We are in the process of finalizing our implementation plan for the capability strategy. And I think one of the elements that we must just bear in mind with this particular strategy is that the strategy takes on the notion that this is not a one-size-fits-all opportunity for all members, and that members have different needs and have different expertise, and that we should be catering for those needs and expertise of members. We are speaking about bespoke training, but we're also speaking about the basics that must be right. Particular things that must be in place as the basics for a member of parliament within the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So the secretary had hinted that we might have opportunity in the future to do presentation around this, and I think that would be far more helpful, I think, for members to understand where we are going with the members' capability strategy. The National School of Government, and you would know, Chair, that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament has a very small workforce, and also the fewest members of Parliament actually also amongst all of the legislatures. So when it comes to training initiatives, training providers don't provide training for fewer than 15 people at a time. Otherwise, it's not a viable financial option for them. And what the NSG will also bring for us is the fact that we can twin and piggyback with international, some members that already benefited from some international exposure and training with other countries. I think Ghana has been one. But over and above that, it also provides us with opportunity to twin with other legislatures and combine training opportunities within the sector through the NSG, because quite a number of, apart from national parliament, there are a number of other legislatures who are using the training modules of the NSG as well. So the NSG is not the only service provider that we will be using. We are looking at expanding the basket and expanding the providers that will provide services both to members as well as to the employees of the WCPP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, I see Member Masipa has a hand up. Member Masipa, do you have a question?
Yes, Chair. Apologies for the late hand. Chair, just with thank you, or before, thank you to the speaker and the official for the presentation, quite insightful. Chair, just with regards to NSG, just a personal question here. I did attend, I think probably what I think is one module. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be 2 or 3 modules. But however, with regards to obviously work obligations, WCPP could not finish. I just want to understand what is the process in terms of really kind of completing that NSG program.
That's a direct question to Mr. Titus.
Yeah, Chair, that particular program has been a very specific and detailed one. It may very well be a once-off one because it involved a number of countries. We will inquire with the NSG whether they will have a repeat of those programs, but that was very specific, very detailed, and involved particular countries, Chair. But we can find out.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary?
Chair, it will be remiss of me not to remind yourself in your wearing your other hat for the request for training dates to be inserted on the parliamentary program. There's quite a few, I'm told there's quite a few items of the members' induction that was not concluded in the previous financial year. But we also have received requests for training, but there's also areas where we've identified, particularly around procedural matters, that we would want to have a training session with members. So it's a sincere request that be placed on the parliamentary program. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we're going to take a little comfort and snack break. There's some food provided, so please eat all of it because money was spent on it, because we never get to spend money in this committee. We're very cost effective and frugal normally, but we felt we haven't seen many of the colleagues in a long time. So we'll be back here at 11. So we'll take a quick 15-minute comfort break, and then we'll be back at 11.
Happy to take any questions. As you indicated, that the APP was distributed in March, and therefore we will not have the presentation, but we will deal with any questions that the committee might have. So officially, I'm tabling the APP for discussion and deliberation.
And those deliberations will take place at a later date. We thank you very much for your time. Please enjoy all of the food and take some of it back to your desks. We really appreciate your time. Members, we'll be back at 11. Wasima says, please don't take the plates. Move into the consideration and adoption of the draft committee report for the Q4 quarterly performance, financial and non-financials. Ms. Kamish Ahmad will in a minute just put that on the screen, but what it will read is the report of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee on the Western Cape Provincial fourth quarter performance, financial and non-financial 2025-26, dated 10th June 2026 as follows. The Parliamentary Oversight Committee convened on 10 June 2026 and concluded its deliberations on the Western Cape Provincial Parliament fourth quarter performance, financial and non-financial, referred to it in accordance with Standing Rule 89.1, in accordance with Section 37.6 and 66.2 of the Financial Management of Parliaments and Provincial Legislatures Act. The Western Cape Provincial Parliament reported to the committee that no instructions were issued for that period under review. Just want to check, got that. Members, are we happy to adopt this? If so, can I have a proposer? Member Brian proposes, and Member Barnes.
Chair, I think I just want to bring in on behalf of the ANC the view of saying that really we must speak about the budget. I am not happy for what is being presented by Parliament to us. The budget does not speak to what we are supposed to be doing. So, Chair, on those bases, we cannot support this budget to continue to reflect what is not actually supposed to be done by members of Parliament for their elected communities. So on those bases, Chair, outside me not supporting only, I think I want, since we are also on resolutions, to have some form of a conversation as a committee and see, because I was not even satisfied on the question that you raised as a chairperson of saying, can then the department give us, not the department, can management then give us the options as to what can be done with the challenges that are there financially on what needs to be executed. So on those bases, Chair, really, I think if we must put a day aside or then have a workshop, as you said, that there are always good strategies and workshops, let's do it, Chair, but it cannot be right that we continue just to tick the box. It's not right. So I cannot stand and support on those bases. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Barnes. So, Member Barnes, for this report, we're just noting that we received the quarterly reports and we've deliberated on it. I do agree with you that we need to have a detailed discussion and we need to prepare ourselves for the next budget cycle. So in our resolution section, I think your point around how do we adequately resource the institution is what we need to resolve. So for now, the report is adopted because in terms of FAMPLA, we need to meet this piece of compliance aspects because Parliament is all about compliance. What we now going to have to do also is just adopt some minutes. So I'm going to table the draft committee meeting minutes for the 18th of March. And that's going to be flagged for you on the screen now. And that was a meeting around the budget, the appropriation bill. And we adopted some committee documents. Can I have a proposer to just support the adoption of those minutes? Member Bryant. And I will second because I was there, I think. And then we are going to just also flag and table the draft committee quarterly report, just indicating what we have done as a committee from January to March 2026. And we're just flagging that on the screen for you as well. That deals with the composition of the committee, as well as the mandate of the committee. And then it just highlights the meetings that we've had. And then the attendance of members. And we didn't spend any money except today. So we spent some money last year. So we still have 34,730 rand available. So we must make sure we spend. We have a new budget. Yeah, so we have more money now. So colleagues, that document has also just been tabled. That is adopted, yes. The next one is the annual activities report. Again, that's going to be flagged on the screen for you now. Again, the first page just deals with the composition of the members. And then it outlines what our purpose is. And it outlines what our oversight activities were. And then it deals with the legislation that we've received, as well as public participation, and then a note on our financial expenditure. Members, are we happy to adopt the annual activities report as well? Thank you, Member Bryant. That is then duly adopted. So we'll now move into resolutions and actions. So Member Barnes, if I heard you correct earlier, the first resolution is that we need to schedule an engagement with the WCPP on the various strategies and plans for them to help us talk us through the execution strategy. And that discussion needs to include a conversation on the budget required to execute the work of the WCPP. Member Bryant?
Chair, I think also just your point that you raised around almost putting together a list of KPIs, perhaps, that we can start to measure the implementation aspect. And yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's not for any lack of intention. I think there's a lot of very well-intentioned people within the administration. It's really just about us being able to follow up and see what's being done and what needs to get a little bit more pressure.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kamish Ahmed, I've also sent an email to everybody this morning asking for you to make input to what you want us to cover. So at our next engagement, what I'll also share is an updated committee plan for the year. We've made some tweaks to that plan, which includes some of these trackers to make it easier for us to sort of track what we do, because there's still some items that we need to follow up from previous engagements as well. Member Bryant?
Yeah, Chair. I mean, I think one of the things that came out of today's meeting that I do think we can already put on the agenda is to have a briefing from infrastructure again in terms of the outstanding physical challenges that we have with the venue, because it's not fair for us to keep laying this at the feet of our administration here if they actually have no control over those repairs. And we need to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, we've got that's one of the things that we're currently tracking. So what we'll do is once I get feedback from members on what we'd like to include, we will just update that document and we'll send it around. And then when we meet again, we can go through that document and see what do we prioritize, etc. Member Barnes?
Thank you, Chair. I want to take further what Member Bryant is raising. what would be the possibility for us to have DOI coming and making a presentation, because we are their client, Chair? I'm of the view that the speaker has had numerous engagements, but we don't see the of what the speaker has been engaging on, and I can attest has been served to DOI. So I think perhaps as a committee, how about we also invite them and put it as part of our program to have DOI coming to present to us. We are their client as to how will they fix whatever needs to be fixed, or what plan can be put in place alternatively for us not to face further challenges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Barnes. We will certainly do that. I think that's a very good idea, so that we can actually hear from the people that do the work. And when we put that on the plan, we'll separate it into infrastructure and also security, so that we also can get the South African Police Service, because some of the security elements and the infrastructure related to security is the responsibility of the South African Police Service. So we can get them to come as well. Colleagues, are there anything else under general before we close? I see
Nothing
no.
from my side, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, with that said, thank you very much for your time this morning. And thank you very much to both the procedural officer as well as the assistant procedural officer for your support and hard work. The meeting is thus adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.